Alrighty, so let's get ready for another round of ZHP repairs. Today, the first thing we're going to do in this video is the passenger front window regulator. At this point, I've already used some safety wire to secure the regulator clips. I've also used one zip tie before I decided that was kind of invasive, but we'll see which one breaks first. I've done it to both clips. Anyways, my window regulator, the directions say to use these new window glass clips instead of the old ones in the car. Now, this is how they're supposed to be installed, and then as you tighten them, it kind of pulls it in and as you tighten the nut or the bolt, it pulls the nut further into the glass to lock everything in place. I'm guessing these break over time, which is why they want you to replace it. Now, when they're really locked in, you can't get the clip out of the glass because it expands and then you're kind of stuck in there. So when you have that situation, you thread your bolts back in like so, just about halfway, and then you take some pliers and then you squeeze against this back red part and the bolt's head. When that happens, it pushes the bolt in and it loosens up the nut as so. Then you can loosen the bolt and then you can squeeze the clip out. So that's my quick little tip for doing the window regulators that I didn't see everybody talk about because I think not everybody replaces these clips. Well, now that I got this working, it is time to start on the rest of the car. First things first, I'm going to show you what I bought because I have a lot more special tools for everything. These are the two front diff bushings, this is the rear diff bushing. I rented this tool from the BMW CCA chapter. This is going to be for the rear diff bushing, the rear diff bushing. Now this tool right here is your eBay 14-piece rear axle bush tool. And I believe it's this sleeve right here is perfect for the front diff bushings of the rear diff. So as you can see, these bushings fit into the sleeve perfectly, and then this piece right here is the perfect diameter to push it in. So we got that going. The unfortunate part is, although this tool is said to do all the bushings on the rear subframe, and the bigger rear diff bushing is also mounted on the subframe, there is not a sleeve and a driver that's big enough to do it. So you do need to have that second tool just in case if you decide to do this type of job. Anyways, I have the rear of the car jacked up and most of the way through to getting the diff pulled. The muffler is hanging down, the rear sway bar is removed. I have the aluminum cross brace at the front of the subframe removed, and then I just put the nuts back onto the subframe bolts just so I don't need a jack. And I had a hell of a time on the driver's side getting the axle off the diff flange because it was rusted on. So my genius idea at the end of the day was bolting this side, the passenger side, back on, bolting the drive shaft back to the input flange of the diff, but leaving all the bolts off this side, and then just putting in first gear and yanking the e-brake. That actually got this thing loose, and as you can see, there's a bunch of surface rust that was kind of just gluing this CV joint to the diff flange. Anyways, got everything out, and I'm going to be pulling the diff shortly, and then we will be pushing bushings back in. And here we have all the bushings pressed out. This is the rearward one, and as you can see, big cracks on it. But even if you look at the front one, if you look right there, a lot of cracks on that too. So this is new, and they're going to be going in. The funny thing with this tool is that you would think that you'd match up colors of the drivers and like sleeves to get the tool out, or to get the bushings out. But when I was first doing the front bushings, This tool is about the same diameter as the bushing itself. I have it placed a little bit funny, but it's about the same diameter, so I was using this one. It turns out this is the wrong one, and this sleeve just kept, or this driver kept on getting jammed into the bushing sleeve. So I ended up switching out to this one in the end, and it got it out like butter. And here's a decent shot at the subframe of this car. Again, you won't be able to see any cracks, but for 225,000 miles, the rust is fairly minimal. So let's get everything buttoned up at this point, because I am dying to get this thing put back together. Continuing on, I'm doing the quick 5-minute project of replacing the hood struts. So these are blown and the hood's fallen down on me multiple times, but I've never been under it luckily, and my fingers haven't been caught. However, just for sake of mind, the old blown BMW ones are being replaced by the Stabilis branded ones from FCP Euro. All you really need is a flat blade screwdriver to pry out these clips, and then the ball socket pops out of the holders and you're good to go. And here's a shot of what the 223,000 mile M54 supposedly ZHP motor looks like with the valve cover off. I don't know how you can really tell, but that's the profile of the cam. Might be more aggressive than a stock M54 B30, who knows. And just here's a kind of look at all the cam profiles. Again, the valve cover wasn't too leaky, like nothing was going down on that heat shield, but I could see it start to weep out from some of the bolt holes on the valve cover, and then the spark plug wells started to look a little bit weepy. So might as well do this for a couple bucks. And I'm a little late to filming the oil filter housing gasket, but I would say 70% done reinstalling the oil filter housing right now. This is the old gasket that came out of it, so I'm just doing your basic BMW maintenance stuff. Got some new crush washers for the Vanos banjo bolt, and there's that. I'm contemplating doing this water pump because the axis is right there and all I gotta do is jack it up and remove an under panel. But we will see as I continually lengthen this video. And also a quick tip for removing the alternator when you're actually getting everything out. Remove the cooling fan so you have some room to work up in front here. When you're removing the lower bolt of the alternator, when you get it out about almost all the way, leave your 16mm socket on there, leave this on there, and then you take a hammer and hammer in this end, because this captive nut kind of squeezes it onto the alternator bracket on the oil filter housing, and you want to get this a little bit further out, like all you need is 1 millimeter, so this guy just kind of plops out and you're not tugging and pulling. And then when you're reinstalling, what you want to do is, I tend to take like a 24mm socket on this side and then a C-clamp, and it just squeezes it out so you can tell that this captive or this side of the nut has been pushed out a bit. And all you need is like a couple millimeters so you can drop this thing back in without any fuss. And out comes the water pump. A little bit messy of a job, but I've never been able to do it without having coolant spill out of the water pump passage anyways. Here's the original pump. This is an actual original pump because the impeller's dated 04. It's quiet, there's no shaft play or anything like that, so this probably would have gone a couple 10,000 miles more. But I just looked at the snout and it was pretty rusted up, so I figured might as well try and replace it for preventative maintenance. I'm probably going to keep this guy just as a spare. Anyway, here's my Salieri pump that I am going to replace it with. It is also a plastic impeller. I don't believe in the cast or metal stamped impeller BS, so I go with the plastic impellers every single time. And alright, let's just get this thing installed. And this should be the last part of the E36 or E46 repairs for this video, and I'm doing the rear trailing arm bushing, and I've never had one come out like this where the sleeve is completely shattered and rusted through. The crazy part is that if you look real close at the date stamp, it says 04. So this is the original 223,000 mile rear trailing arm bushing, and I could kind of feel that these trailing arms are going bad, the bushings were going bad, because if I would hold like a nice long sweeper around a parking lot, you can feel the rear end just kind of squirm around. Anyways, we're going to put some new Corteco ones in, using that MIS rear trailing arm bushing tool, which has saved me multiple times, and we will be good to go, and I'll sum everything up for the weekend. Alright, and time for an outro, because I always forget to do these. This project kind of spanned a couple weekends, so I don't know where I left off, but basically all the drivability issues that I really had with the car before are fixed. So diff doesn't clunk anymore, the rear trailing arm bushings are in, so the rear end feels a lot more solid. On the front end side, I've gotten the valve cover gasket and the oil filter housing gasket completed, but the oil pan gasket is still leaking because the engine support bar that I ordered is back ordered, so I can't actually hold up the engine support. The hood struts are in, the water pump's in, and from the looks of it, the expansion tank is from 2016, so I'm going to leave that alone for a couple more months, years, or whatever. And I don't know how old the radiator is, but I'm also going to leave that guy alone for now, because this car won't get any mileage or miles put on it at all. So my parts list is actually getting really small at this point. I have this Corteco oil pan gasket, and then the Turner subframe reinforcements that are going to have to go in when everything else arrives. And the only other thing I really want to do is the rear subframe reinforcement with some bushings. And I would be happy with how this car is, and I wouldn't really touch anything else on this car. I guess if I get around to doing all that stuff this summer, I can start working on the cosmetics, and it's really just buying a lot of touch-up paint so we can get these little scratches filled in, and then start polishing all these like shadow line trim pieces and going with that. But otherwise, that is the end to this very long video and the current status of my 2K ZHP. Thank you guys for watching.